everybody. Welcome to this live stream of this Bachata Timing live stream. We will be starting in a second after this video. Hello everybody. Welcome to this Bachata Timing live stream. I'm really excited for today because today we're going to be focusing on starting on 4, on the 4th beat of the music. And I was planning last week, of course, we focused on couples and we watched videos where they had started on the 3rd beat of the music, on 3. And so I had always planned on doing this live stream as well, where we break down different couples, different social dancers, and videos where the couples have started on 4 in the music, and so they're touching or tapping on the 3rd beat of the music on 3. And so really excited for this. I ended up moving this live stream up, the topic of it, partly inspired by Isolde's Instagram video. So after our live stream last week, Isolde created a video in which she's side by side both dancing on 1 and on 4. So where she started on the 1 and then she started on the 4. So we're gonna look at this video now, and then we're also gonna kind of dive into it a little bit later in the live too and get some of her perspectives, filming the video within the chat, so we'll get her perspectives on it later. So here's the video that inspired me to move this live up so we could really focus on this particular timing. And real quick before we look at that, remember social dancing, bachata social dancing in the Dominican Republic and in other communities around the world as well, couples may start on the 1, 2, 3, or 4th beat of the music. And so depending on how they interpret or feel the music, they're not counting, they're not necessarily interpreting it as dancing or naming it as dancing on 2 or on 3, or in this case for today on 4. But social dances will and do start on various timings. So just have that as a little bit of background. I have other videos that dive into that more. So today we are going to be focusing on 4, partly inspired by Isolde's video right here. So let's look at it. So before anything, are you able to determine with each of these videos what timing she's dancing on? Where her first of 3 steps is and where is her touch or tap? So I love that video, and I love that she took the time to film it, to break it down with some text. Because, I mean, for one, the takeaway for me for that video is that she's dancing musically and musically connected on both timings. So the video on the dance on the left of the screen, she started on 1 and is tapping on 4. And that's the timing that she feels, in a sense, and she would say this, most comfortable dancing on. And so she on that one, she's dancing on 1, tapping on 4. And then in the video, in the dance on the right of the screen, she started on 4 and dancing on 3. But when I saw this video, you know, until she mentions later on in the video that, okay, that's a little out of her comfort zone, I didn't notice it. I mean, to me, she looks comfortable on both timings, solid rhythmically on both timings, obviously musical. And so that's a really important point, especially for dancers that have learned principally starting on 1, and then they, you know, they have this concept of, wait, people social dance starting on all these different timings, but how does that musically make sense? And we can get into that more later. But one, you know, when you feel it, that's one, experientially, but you can see it, and you can really see it clearly in this video that both are musically connected. And so I love that video for that. We're going to get Isolde's feedback on it and just her process of recording and her thoughts later on in the live. But really happy she took the time to do that video. And if you have any questions throughout the live, include them in the chat, and then we'll get to them further on. So in this next video, we're going to actually see, so it's a great follow-up to Isolde's video, we're going to see 2 couples social dancing. So I filmed this video in the Dominican Republic. We're going to see 2 couples social dancing. One couple has started on the 1 and are touching on the 4, and the other couple has started on the 4 and are touching on the 3. And so you can, again, just like Isolde's video, you can see it side by side, but this time in couples. And so let's watch this video here. So does everybody see that? The couple right now in the center started on 1 and is touching on 4. Let's rewind that. So let me know if you're able to see that. So we just watched Isolde's video, where her video on the left, she started on the 1, touching on 4. Her video on the right, she started on 4, touching on 3. And now we just finished watching a social dance video I recorded in the Dominican Republic, where in couples, we see the couple on the left has started on 1, touching on 4, and the couple on the right has started on 4 and touching on 3. So we can see both of them. Let's go back one more time while people are joining to Isolde's video so we can see it again. And I'd love to hear in the comments as we go along if you're able to see that, because that will help kind of direct my teaching and my questions. So back to Isolde's video. Right? So both timings, very musical, very connected. And now, same timings, this time in couples. couple on the left started on 1 is on 1, the couple on the right on 4. Awesome. So hopefully everybody saw this. Going back to our last live, talking about some of the tools. So, this series is primarily for dancers that have become really accustomed, perhaps learned in classes or in communities where primarily you're starting on 1, touching on 4. And now maybe you find yourself wanting to go to the Dominican Republic, dancing more in the Dominican Republic, or in communities where there's this diversity of timings, where a partner or a dancer may have started on the 1, 2, 3, or 4 in the music. And you're now in a position where you're wanting to explore that and kind of break that down a little more. And so, if you're a dance teacher out there, or if you're a dancer, a really important piece of this, especially coming from primarily dancing on 1, is starting to understand and hear and experience the different instruments in bachata, okay? And so Carlos Cinta, my friend and colleague, has done a lot of work over the years in musicality and breaking down the instruments, and other teachers have as well, but he was really the first that really released that kind of breakdown and instrument breakdown, and the derecho, also the different sections and musical sections. And so understanding this and beginning to hear this and these different instruments is a really important piece in a bachata dance timing journey as well. In fact, when we used to teach together quite a bit, if I was choosing the order of the classes and I was going to teach a bachata timing class, for instance, I would certainly want Carlos to teach his bachata instrument breakdown before that, because it just makes everything so easier for me as I start to explain and break down and we start to experience dancing on different timings. If the dancers already have an idea of the bass line, the bongo, okay? And so we're gonna watch it. This next video we're gonna watch is from Yasso Records and Carlos and Joan Soriano, a collaboration. And you can go to the Yasso Records YouTube channel and see this whole thing. But this is kind of a bachata breakdown. And it's very helpful to see and hear what the different instruments are doing. And again, if you're a teacher teaching this, wanting to teach timing, even if it's just little sections, these are important concepts. So now we're gonna see Carlos and Joan and the band talk a little about the instruments and get that background before we move on and break down the dancing on 4, okay?
There are 3 principal rhythms of bachata. The basic rhythm of derecho, majao, and mambo. Some of the musicians, we have Carlitos, he's playing the bongo. He's done a lot of recordings with Joan. Playing the huira, we have Meme. Meme is recorded with Aventura, and he's currently the huirero for Romeo of Aventura. And on the bass, we have Billy. Billy's recorded with Mochi Alejandra, Leonardo Paniagua, Joy Vera, and many other people. We also have Fernando Soriano playing the second guitar. Who's the brother of Joan, and he records with Joan. And then playing the master guitar, or the requinto, none other than El Duque himself.
Right? These are the essential bachata instruments here.
No.
No?
No. No.
So now we're going to listen for the breakdown here. Okay, so we're going to start out with the bongo, and I'm going to let it run. Now, as you're listening to this, I'm going to put the question up on the screen here in a second, but I really want you to ask yourself, and this is really important too if you're a dance teacher, because your students they may not even know to ask this question, but they're going to be at least subconsciously wondering, what do you hear? What do you connect to? If you're already dancing on time, solid, if you're able to keep a solid beat, on one timing or on multiple timings, what are you hearing? What are you connecting with? Is it one particular instrument? Is it a sound within those instruments? Is it a combination of how a sort of groove that happens when these sounds and these instruments combine? Ask yourself what you're hearing. You don't need to always consciously know it. Of course you don't, in order to stay on timing. But when you start to break it down and dancing on different timings, it can become helpful to have that realization, like, what do I connect to? What am I hearing? Okay, so let's listen.
Hola, ¿cómo están? Soy Radamés Reyes, Memé. Esta es la güira, lo que usamos para tocar bachata. Entonces ahora les voy a explicar lo que es el estilo derecho en ella. Dice así.
Right? That's like the click track. Whoop, I skipped that one. Here we go. Billy with the bass. So real quick, just breaking down what we heard so far, the bongo. These are sounds that are going to become really important when you start dancing on the floor, trying to get on it, etc. So we had the bongo. Taki, tiki, taki, buki, taki, tiki, taki, buki, buki. That book, right, that we saw in the video, that's happening on 4. That's happening on the 4th beat of the music. And so if you're internalizing that sound, if you're able to hear that consistent sound through the song, if you're dancing on 1, starting on 1, that 4th beat, that sound, buki, taki, tiki, taki, buki, that's happening on your touch or tap, your 4th beat of the music. Now, if you're starting on 4, starting your 3 steps on 4, and thus touching on 3, that sound, that 4 now is on your 1st step, right? So it's your 1st of 3 steps. Taki, tiki, taki, buki, taki, tiki, taki, step, right? You're stepping on 4. And so that's one sound in which you're able to connect to and get on. So if you're already hearing that sound and internalizing it while dancing on 1, it's going to come in handy when you're dancing on 4, because now that's that beat, that sound, you don't need to be counting, right? You don't need to be counting the numbers, but knowing where these sounds happen within the numbers is helpful. So that sound is now happening on your 1st of 3 steps. So for me, the bongo is very helpful when I'm dancing on 4, but it's not enough. We also heard the bass, right? The bass line, doom, 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 doom. So the bass line, this is going to make more sense as we break down the couples to come, but that 1, that big full bass sound, that 1, where is that occurring in your step? So if your 1st of 3 steps is happening on the 4th beat on the 4, your 2nd step, the step that follows that, which is your 2nd step, is happening now on the 1 of the music. And so on that bass line, boom. It's very, very important. And as we watch a lot of these couples dancing in that forward and back, kind of this forward and back step, foundational or basic step, this flow, it starts to make a lot of sense. You can connect that second step, which steps past your first, and you can connect that to the one. You can connect that to that bass line, that one of the music, and you can also connect it to other instruments as well. So the one is also, and that bass line is very important when dancing on 4. And we're going to look at that here. Okay, so another concept, people also often ask is like, the one is there, it's there musically, but what's different is, within our steps, within our foundational or basic step, where we place the emphasis within those steps doesn't have to be on our first of 3 steps. It can be on the second step. It could be on the touch. It can be on the third step, right? So the emphasis, and how do we define emphasis? Emphasis may be defined in weight transfer. It may be defined in how long or with how much intensity we hold a step, how fast we move a step, how far does that step go. So there's a number of ways in which dancers emphasize a step. But important to know that our most emphasized step within a bachata song doesn't have to occur always on that first of 3 steps. Okay, so let's watch again that couple, and let's look at the shape of their step. Here we go. So before we start, we're going to be watching the couple with the gentleman in the red shirt. They've started on 4, and so they're touching on 3. And I want you to notice the shape as well of that foundational step and how he's stepping past his first step. He's got a very kind of forward and back linear step, okay? 4-1, 4-1, 4-1, 4-1. Right? Does everybody see that? Was everybody able to see the flow of that couple? And the gentleman in particular, the gentleman in red. So, this idea that our most emphasized step is always the first of our 3 steps, is not correct when you break down social dancing, especially on these different timings. And so the one of the music, whether it's that bass line, whether it's the lyrics or the vocals or whatever emphasis is occurring on the one of the music, that can be represented, that can be interpreted and felt and experienced dancing on all these different timings. Okay, so that's another thing. Just because you've started on the 1, 2, 3, or 4 doesn't mean you're not connected to the one of the music. Okay, so let's watch another couple here that's dancing on 4. Whoops. Here we go. Now this couple I loved. I filmed this in the Dominican Republic. Someone asked last week, do we know how bachata was danced in the 90s, in the late 80s, during that period? Because there's not a lot of videos out there of bachata social dancing in the Dominican Republic from that period. There are some videos, especially if you watch old concert footage and concerts in El Campo, you can find dance footage from the 90s, etc. But another way, besides asking dancers that were around and dancing bachata during that period, another way to start to determine, how bachata may have been danced is to film and watch dancers that were, dancing in the 90s and in the 80s and in the 70s and perhaps in the 60s. And so I've interviewed and filmed a number of dancers that were already dancing before bachata became a genre and then started dancing bachata. So here's one of those kind of dancers, and really loved filming this. And this couple is dancing on four. They're starting the first step on the fourth beat of the music. They're touching on three. And again, watch that second step, his second step, which is occurring on the one, and how he emphasizes that. Here we go. 4-1, 4-1, 4-1. He's so good. Right? Isn't that good? That's so good. So I was with Joanne, he was with me, and he was like, he really liked watching him dance as well. It kind of reminded him of his dad, Kande. They were of a similar era, you know, both grew up agriculture, similar area of the country, different campos. And they do have different styles and sort of foundational steps a little bit. This dancer has a little bit more linear forward and back style, but you're able to see, and I had friends of mine, teachers, when I first released that video, wondering what timing it was on and saying, you know, isn't that on one? Isn't he dancing on one? Because you can clearly see that emphasis and that step, which is actually his second step, happening on the first beat of the music. So it's very easy to look at that video and feel like they're dancing on one. They've started on one. Let's watch it one more time, but they've actually started the first of three steps on four. That emphasized step often is happening on the second step, which is on the first beat of the music here, and then they're touching on three. Let's finish that video. Here we go.
Yo no me recuerdo cuando yo comencé a bailar.
4-1. 4-1.
Yo no me recuerdo cuando yo comencé a bailar, porque comencé a bailar muy pequeño.
Right? Again, so he grew up dancing. So beyond this bachata timing, when we're talking about styles and roots, the roots of bachata and where it came from and the dancers that influenced how it's danced today, you know, that's one of them. That's one of many, you know, that we're dancing socially. But that gives us a lot of clues to, you know, how bachata developed and sort of stylistically where it came from. He also has quite a lot of interesting footwork. So while he's obviously connected to the bass and the bongo, and you can hear it and see that in his step, he's also, this footwork kind of bubbles up, bubbles out, expresses itself in relation to the lead guitar and some of these melody that he'll represent with syncopated steps, triple steps, movement, etc. So that you can watch that full video on my YouTube channel. And if you're practicing dancing on four, you know, you can reference that visually, reference that couple and even the shape of their dance and begin to practice the on four as well. So, you know, one of the reasons I was so excited for this live stream and Isolde's video, which showed both on one and on four, was because in my experience teaching various timing in festivals and classes, etc., on four, starting on four is generally the one that students have the most questions about initially, right? And that there's sometimes the most resistance to. And so, it's exciting to cover that. And honestly, even in my own social dance journey and my own dance journey, on four was the one I personally had the most challenging. Coming from first dancing primarily and being super solid, starting on one, touching on four, and then breaking that down to today where I feel probably most comfortable, most connected when I'm starting on three. But the starting on four was probably what gave me the most trouble at first, right? It was I had to concentrate the most. It was the most challenging to stay on timing. Because you need to start looking for these other connections, these other musical things to hold on to. And also you need to perhaps adapt your foundational step just a little bit, and that where you're putting that emphasis of the step, just to help you connect when you're on the four, okay? So next video, next social dance. The couple in the middle is also started on four. 4-1, 4-1. So good. Now, has everybody seen it, right? There's something this dancer does. Again, we're looking at that foundational step, but the woman in the middle particularly, she's really, in my eyes, she's a great dancer. She's at ease. She's very rooted, but she's expressing herself musically. But let's watch that again. Notice how, as she's feeling it, she's also very connected. Even though they've started on four, she's very connected to the one as well. And so watch her body and her weight as she kind of transfers here. Here. Awesome. So if you have any questions up until this spot, her body position, her emphasis was actually something I noticed in Isolde's video as well when Isolde was dancing on four. And I'm sure she wasn't consciously thinking about it, but it was a way she while dancing on four was also marking the one and putting emphasis on the one. We're going to hear from Isolde in a few minutes here and rewatch that video that she posted, and I'll point that out. So we're going to take a step away from just the four for a second, and I want us to get into bachata timing as it's social danced, as it's experienced in the Dominican Republic. So what's going to happen on this social dance video next is another couple is going to start to dance. And we've talked about in the past who starts a dance, how it starts, and that there's not necessarily a standard for it. So I want to get your feedback on this, but I want you to sort of pay attention here on how this next dance starts, okay? Here they come. Now, did everybody notice that? Does anybody have any ideas? For one, who started the dance? And so who determined the timing? Was it the lead or was it the follow? And at what point did they, whoever it was, at what point did they start the dance? So this is a concept that I've spoken about in the past. Does anybody out there, did anybody see it? Let's watch it one more time. We're going to watch the couple start the dance, right? And I want you to notice who starts it and thus who determines the timing, whether it's on the 1, 2, 3, or 4. Then notice what timing are they're on. And at what point did this person start the dance, okay? Here it goes. Any ideas? And what timing are they on? Okay, we got one answer here. Right? That's the right answer. She very clearly started the dance. So again, we've talked about that before, that the majority of the time in the Dominican Republic, the follow is starting the dance. And so as they're starting it, they're determining the timing. They may start on the 1, 2, 3, or 4. Another super cool thing about that video is, so we can't know who asked the person to dance. It may have been the gentleman at the table from across the room, caught the eye and was like, let's dance. But we see her coming from across the screen, and before she even reaches the table, she's already doing 3 steps and a touch, right? So she's already dancing before he stands up to get on the dance floor. And she keeps that timing within the dance. So she started it, and I've mentioned that before as well. Sometimes the follow or a dancer may wait until they get on the dance floor and then half step touch, or they'll start the dance. But other times they're already dancing as they approach the dance. They've already determined timing before they get to the dance floor. And so let's watch that one more time. 5. She's already dancing. She's already on 1. There you see that. She keeps it. And there they go. So that was awesome, to be able to see these starts. Again, there's not a right or wrong socially or culturally, but there are differences culturally throughout the world on who starts a dance, which direction it may start, how it starts. And so sometimes these standards that we get taught in classes aren't actually how it's social danced in certain communities, like the idea that a lead is the one that starts, and I need to start with my left foot, right, going that direction, like that standard, which may make it easier teaching a class, getting everybody on the same foot, is not how it's social dance. And that goes for social dance in Cuba as well. I was just at a festival with Cuban dance teachers. They were teaching a cha-cha-cha class. And again, as they were teaching it was like, well, in Cuba, social dancing, whether you start to the right, to the left, the direction can vary. So some of these concepts, we can see it in a variety of dance genres throughout the Caribbean, throughout Latin America as well. So again, there's not right or wrongs in a lot of this, but there can be cultural differences. So it's important to be aware of that. And, if you can, cultural humility. And it's also important to give your students, if you're a dance teacher, these little nuggets so that they can be prepared and humble and, be included wherever they dance. Okay, next dance here. This is impressive. So this is Yenny y Alejandro. And again, if you were first to see this video, you may not know they're dancing on the 4, because they're also highly connected on the 1, and they've kind of have this forward and back step. but there's also a lot of different footwork and syncopated steps and rotations that are going on in this. And, you know, for me to do these steps on one, you know, on one or whatever, any timing, you know, I couldn't do it. It would be challenging. But the fact that you can dance on multiple timings and still musically incorporate this type of footwork, you know, it really is impressive. It's amazing. So next video, we're going to break down Alejandro and Yenny. I filmed this in the Dominican Republic, Mano Guayabo. Here we go. 4-1. 4-1. Awesome. So that's another video. That's another video that you can find on YouTube when you're practicing dancing on different timings and visually connect with Yenny and Alejandro dancing, connect with them in order to help stay on that timing. But if you've noticed, so they had started on the 4, their second steps on the 1. Alejandro especially kind of steps past that second step and marks that 1 as well, and then they're touching on the 3. But there's a lot of syncopated steps going on. There's also a lot of, you know, body movement, footwork. Another important concept while we're on this is you'll notice both dancers, they're expressing it musically, they're connected, they're on the same timing, but they don't have to do the same thing footwork wise or body movement wise. So Alejandro has his own footwork that he's expressing, he's representing, and Yenny has hers. And so they're able to stay on time, stay connected, stay on beat, but they also have that individual expression element, meaning just because one person does a certain type of footwork doesn't mean it needs to be responded by the partner in the exact same way. Okay, so let's finish that video just to kind of see what we're talking about there. Right? So you're able to see they're connected timing wise, they're on the same time, but they each have individual footwork elements that are different from the other. Okay, so that's a really common aspect of bachata in the Dominican Republic. And, you know, if you're dancing with someone, you don't need to get ahead of yourself or, you know, look at their feet too much and be like, oh, I need to do that. I need to copy that, or let it throw you. You know, you do your thing, whether it's the 3 steps, touch and stay solid, or add your element as well. Okay, so that's something, you know, we've seen different styles here as well. Now we're going to go back. We're going to look at the Isolde video again from the top, and, you know, if she's watching right now, love to hear in the chat sort of some background on what it was like filming that video. You know, if you have any insights on how do you personally, Isolde, start, if you're going to start on 4, you know, because you knew you wanted to do that video, how were you able to determine you were on 4 versus on 1, which, as you say in the video, you're, because of the community you dance in and where you've taught, you're more familiar, you have more dances starting on 1, touching on 4 than on 4. So love to watch this video again and then hear from Isolde. What did she connect with musically while she was recording this video? Here we go. Start from the top. Yeah, and for all of us, what do you think she's hearing? What do you see in her body? What is she expressing musically? So while Isolde's collecting her thoughts and writing them down and giving us some insight on that, here's a few things that I see. The video on the left, she's dancing on 1. She's starting on the first beat of music, touching on 4. You notice her first of 3 steps, more often, there's a lot of emphasis. So after the touch, either coming forward and back, you're seeing a lot of emphasis on her first step, right? Marking the emphasis that she's hearing within the first beat of the music, which may be the bass line, dum, 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 right? It may be the bass line. It also may be the vocals, because there's often a vocal emphasis that happens on the 1, okay? It might be other instruments, other sounds, but you can see that in the structure of her basic dance. Now, real important, foundationally, she hasn't switched her style or switched the way she dances, whether she's dancing on the 1 or the 4, she's still dancing her personal style. I recognize it as Isolde, but a little bit of where the emphasis happens on the steps and the shapes may be different. So on the 4, her first step, there is less emphasis, and at times we see more emphasis on that second step at times, which is happening on the 1 of the music. So, and we also have Vanessa saying she's seeing her interpretation of the guitar within that left video as well. So now we got Isolde chiming in. I filmed myself first just to explore what I might connect to musically in my basics on this timing. Right. So it was kind of an exploration, thinking about what she mentioned to me. It was pushing beyond her comfort zone and trying this, and then discovering what she connected to. And so, by the way, there's a lot of reasons why you might want to start exploring different timings if you're already solid starting on 1 and you're thinking, okay, a big reason might be you want to go to the Dominican Republic, or you're already going there and you're wanting to social dance, and just that's one aspect and one way to connect is by having that diversity of timing and that able to dance in a variety of timings. But also, even if you're in a community or a dance club or a dance floor that you're primarily starting on 1 most of the time and you don't get a lot of these other dances, still in your house, there's a lot of fun and discoveries that can be made musically and in regards to your own dance and your own step by starting to explore other timings. You start to hear songs maybe in a different way and interpret them in a different way. You start to connect with certain patterns in the music, certain instrumental patterns in a different way. Perhaps the second guitar, that syncopated up, which can be so difficult to hear. You may start to connect with that on a different timing in a different way. So there's a lot of ways to do it. We're going to hear from Isolde more on that as we go, but I do want us to hear and listen to that second guitar, that rhythm guitar, and the lead guitar. Because as I've explored dancing on the floor, and I mentioned, for me it was the most challenging at first. Some of these other sounds, so not just, of course, the bass and the bongo is very important rhythmically to attach to get on timing, but start connecting to what the lead guitar is doing and also what the rhythm guitar is doing. And I think that can become very helpful. Here we go. So these other timings, and we'll hear from Isolde. Here's the second guitar.
Hola, yo soy Fernando Soriano, bachatero. Voy a tocar la parte derecha de la segunda guitarra.
Does everybody hear that? And to and to and. So that up, that syncopated strumming is happening in the rhythm guitar, along with basically the bass line also being thumb plucked. Doom, 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 doom. So you've got kind of this harmonizing with the bass line happening with the rhythm guitar, and you also have this really lift, this syncopated lift that's happening, the strum. So let's listen to that again. And this sound, as you can connect to it, becomes really, really nice when exploring different timings. And by the way, let's say you're in the countryside with a bachata musician and they're playing their new song and they only have their guitar and they're singing it along. They're going to be playing probably rhythm guitar along with it, and maybe then playing a combination of a lead guitar, a little of the melody, but then as they're singing, they're going to be playing the rhythm guitar along with it, you know. And you can, with just the rhythm guitar, you can actually have a great bachata dance because it has that bass element and it's got that syncopated element, and with the voice, it's wonderful. So here, let's listen to that second guitar, the rhythm guitar again. Right? And to and. So that syncopated, that up. And this, as far as sounds go, and I think Carlos would agree with me, he's taught, you know, all those instrument breakdowns. When you have a full bachata song, it can be at times challenging to pick out that sound. You know, it's there, you feel it, but to consciously pick out that sound at times can be challenging. There are particular songs where it's more pronounced, and it's certainly in certain eras of bachata and certain musicians, you hear that rhythm guitar more. So, you know, keep an ear out for that as we go. Now we've got some comments from Isolde and Sonruta about timing and what they're hearing. So Isolde, to keep the timing, I was following the bongo by tapping on the higher taki sound on the third beat, and then taking my first step on the fourth or lower drum, so the buki sound, right? Does everybody understand? So the bongo, taki, tiki, taki, buki, taki, tiki, whoops, taki, tiki, taki, buki, taki, tiki, taki, buki, taki, tiki, taki, buki. So she's taking her first of three steps on the fourth beat of the bongo, the buki sound, buki, and she's connecting her tap or her touch or her syncopated, but basically her touch step, she's connecting with the bongo as well. And so we have a high slap that happens on the one and the three during derecho. Taki, tiki, taki, buki, taki, tiki, taki, buki. So she's connecting tac on the touch, book on the first of 3 steps. And that's what I want us to ask ourselves and figure out. Also, what's happening on that 3rd beat, which is your touch, if you're dancing on 4, is there's a really distinct bass line as well. There's a nice full bass line, because the bolero bass line, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, the bachata bass line, and 3, 4, 1, and 3, 4, 1. So you can hear that bass. There's a nice bass note that's happening on 3, 4, 1 as well. So there's a number of things to connect to. Then we have Sonruta here. Thanks for joining us, all of you, really. It's great to see you all. Saying, you hear songs totally differently when you experiment with other timings. Sometimes I find myself automatically dancing on a different timing to specific songs. So she's saying she finds herself, depending on the song, starting, connecting with it differently, musically, and just feeling a timing in a different way. And I do the same. So a lot of times it's not conscious, and that this is a super important thing. While we may have preferences, you may prefer starting on the 1, I may prefer starting on the 3, and do that the majority of the time if I am allowed to start. The truth is, depending on the social context, depending on the song, different dancers will dance different timings depending on the song and depending on the dancer. And so I have multiple videos I've recorded of the same dancer dancing on different timings socially. So, I'm able to kind of look at this and compare it as well. Like, okay, this song they're dancing on this timing, this song they're dancing on that timing. So really interesting. Again, back to Isolde and the feedback. So back to that video, as she mentioned with the bongo. So she's hearing that slap that's happening on the 3rd beat for her touch, and then following it with the buki, which is happening on the 4th step. Here we go. So we're watching the video on the right, which is her dancing on 4. So again, Isolde says, I normally interpret the music with my hips. And what I noticed afterwards was that dancing on 4 timing, they were highlighting the requinto melody, swinging from 1 to 2. So highlighting that idea that you're now connecting in a different way with the music. So I think this is really interesting, kind of figuring out, people hear different. There's so much to hear in bachata and other genres. In bachata, this polyrhythmic music, there's a lot of rhythms and different rhythms that are going on and things to connect to and still be musical and connected. Okay, and so thank you, Isolde, for any more insights throughout the live. Please share with us. This is super helpful. I'd like to, follow that with kind of getting into, I think one reason, a little bit of just, and this is my personal, I guess, experience with On 4. At one point, I did do, a breakdown of hundreds of bachata couples from videos I have, social dancing in the Dominican Republic, and counting the number of dancers on different timings, like really doing a breakdown of how many dancers of these hundreds of couples, hundreds of dancers, how many were on 3, and I created this huge list, and this was a number of years ago, so I would like to do it again with all the new videos that are happening and just have it even more comprehensive. And when I did it at that point, again, this isn't scientific, this is just my own research, on 3 was actually the most common. First, very important to say, all 4 were significantly represented, where you could say all 4 are danced social dancing in the Dominican Republic. There was a significant representation of all 4 timings. But on 3, when I did this research, was the most. That followed very closely with on 1 and on 2, and then on 4 was the least dance. Again, all 4 were significantly danced, but on 4 was the least. But since I did that research, of course, all these videos and all these examples, and I do see dancers on 4, so I would like to do it again and like to do that breakdown. But one reason why students may have a challenge with this timing with the on 4 is the start of it. Like, how do you start? I mean, of course, if you hear that 4, if you hear that bongo, the buki, you can start your first of 3 steps on that. So you can simply daki diki daki buki daki diki daki start, right? You can hear that sound and you can start your first of the 3 steps on that buki. But as we know, dancers often start with a rock touch, when they get on the dance floor. Okay, we'll see that in a second, but a rock touch or step touch. And it sort of becomes, at least for me, maybe if you're starting that way, a little bit less intuitive to get on the 4. And so again, these are just kind of my ideas of why things are as they are, and I don't know that, because once you're on the 4 and connected, especially in this kind of with this forward, these Dominican foundational steps, it makes a lot of musical sense. But sometimes getting on it or starting on it can make less sense. So again, that taki tiki taki buki, and you're starting on that buki, that's one way to start. Another way, of course, if you're starting on the 1, you would be taking 2 steps and then a touch, which again, that's not traditionally how a person starts the dance, where it's 1 touch, it's a rock touch, and then a touch, a rock step touch. And so maybe it's a little bit less intuitive to get on it. And again, this is not happening consciously or counted out as dancers do it. It's just sort of happening. So for whatever reason, when I was analyzing, it seemed to happen a little bit less often than on the 3, on the 1, and on the 2, but again, highly represented. So we've got the start. We're going to go back another video where they're dancing on the 4. We saw this last week as well, and we used this video last week I was asking who started the dance, right? We were kind of debating on, did the follow start, as is very common in the Dominican Republic, or the lead? But regardless, when they do start, so we're just starting, how do you start on the 4? When they do start, the follow is starting in this case. Okay, so we'll just watch that. I'm not giving it away. We got that last week, but she's starting with sort of a rock and a touch, and then she's on the 4. The couple's on the 4. Okay, so this is an awesome video analysis opportunity, teaching opportunity. Who out there has danced a variation of what might be called the zigzag step, right? Where you're or a diagonal zigzag. You're kind of stepping diagonally, and then you're a Z step or diagonal step, zigzag step, pass. So this couple does it just for a moment. Again, a lot of these foundational steps are happening fluidly, meaning they might be in a diagonal box step. Now they're going forward and back. Now a little bit of zigzag. But if you're in the zigzag step, what is happening on your second step, right? It's stepping, there's that emphasis coming behind at times. So let's watch right here. Watch them get into that kind of zigzag step. And how it flows with on four. Here they're gonna get into it. Right here. Ba. One. Back. Three. And then they're out of it. Nice. He marked that bass line, that baka, right? The woom that's marking the change that's going to happen in the music. La baka, right? That bass, the woom. And he marked it with his foot there. So, you know, again, that it's the timing is so rich. We've talked about this before, but when you're going from being really solid in one timing, starting on one, touching on four, and now you're starting to explore and experiment with different timings, both social dance and just learning it. Some of the challenges are going to be that you've learned a lot of your footwork elements, for instance, a lot of your body connection, even to when you do your rotations and partners or when you lead a turn. All these things you've sort of connected and learned on one timing. And now as you start to do a variety of different timings, those pieces start fitting differently. They start fitting in differently, and you got to find new ways and kind of let it go and find ways to organically connect them within other timings, because you're ultimately not counting, you're connecting it with the groove of the music, with the sounds of the music. And so that's one of the big challenges. So my recommendation, one of the recommendations is, you know, go back to that simplicity, you know, that simplicity of your step as you're exploring these other timings, and let the things you already know, let them just kind of flow out in little bits, you know, and then you may have to find, you need to check yourself. Did you go revert back to the timing you're used to? Or are you still on timing? So that's where it can be helpful, social dancing with someone that's on this other timing, or visually connecting with a video where you know what timing they're on, so you can kind of check yourself. But you need to return to that simplicity and find a lot of comfort in that before you start moving on, because just have that in your mind. All these things you've learned, you've connected them on one timing, and now you're kind of changing that around. So that'll be one of the challenges. I think we have great Colorado friend, Ron. Is Ron still on the live? So he's in the Dominican Republic right now, and there's a video on Instagram that is doing well. And so I just wanted to, got some of us Colorado dancers representing in the DR, so wanted to show this video. And there's also some interesting timing lessons within this video, beyond just being a great dance. So I want to share that. Thanks, Ron, for sending it and giving permission for it. So Ron, of course, is known for DJing, known for, you know, boundless energy, more than I wish I had the energy as far as the social dancing and travel. So here we go. Oh, that's so good. I've been waiting for more high quality videos where the light's not too dark. Some good lit videos of Ron. So I'm going to be sharing this on my YouTube channel on the shorts in the coming days, but we're going to watch it again. Does anybody know, did anybody notice, since this is a bachata dance timing live, what happened timing wise? What timing was Ron and his partner on, and what happened? Oh, it's impressive. So let's watch it one more time, and then if anybody has thoughts of because there's some good lessons here as well. Eso. So, one, we don't see who started the timing there when they social dance. We don't know who asked for the dance and who started it. We'd have to get some background info for Ron, but we do know, we see that they're dancing on 3 as they're starting, right? So their first of 3 steps is happening 3, 4, 1. So their third step is happening on the first beat of the music, and then their touch, right? So it's going 3, 4, 1, and then they're touching on 2. And I know Ron loves that timing and is super solid on that timing. And then something happens in the middle of the dance, and they end up, now they're on 1, and they finish the dance, and they just keep going. Again, back to social customs. They just keep going on 1, right? So, that's super interesting. When we get that cultural lesson of, okay, if a timing changes in the Dominican Republic more often than not, it's not stop the dance and get back on the timing you're on. You're with as little fuss and acknowledgement as necessary. You continue dancing and musically connecting. And that's what they did. Okay, so let's watch that one more time. They're going to start on 3. We don't know who started, if she started or if he started, but they start on 3, and then something happens within the dance, and then they continue on 1. So on 3. And they continue on, right? Yes, so thank you so much, Ron. We wish you, happy dancing there for the coming days, coming weeks. Thanks for sharing that video, and the ability to kind of, for those that haven't danced in the Dominican Republic, to understand some of these cultural differences. And if you're dancing in a community with its primary starting on 1, touching on 4, the custom may be different. If you make a mistake musically, or this music skips within that community, maybe you do get back on the 1. If you're dancing with someone that only feels comfortable on 1 timing, then perhaps you do get back on the 1. So, in social dance, sometimes we need to think less as right and wrong, and understand that, really connect to why we dance, the connection with the music, the connection with people, with culture, with community, with ourselves, connect with that, and then understand a lot of these kind of norms and standards are cultural, and they can vary by region, by people, by age, all these different things. It's not always right and wrong. So thanks, Ron, for sending that. Ooh, we got some info from Ron on the start. She did start the dance. This was the start. So she did start the dance, and so she determined the timing and they started on 3. Now, what I think happened, Ron, as far as why you ended up on 1, but I don't know. She does a really cool piece of footwork. You know, you're expressing yourself. You're on 3. You're in the groove. You're both super tight and rooted. She does a footwork that it almost looks like she taps or touches on a different timing, and then she goes into it, and it kind of went into things. But we'll get into that later. So this next video, we're kind of coming to the end here, you know, so I want to thank Isolde and Ron for sharing those videos. Of course, all the social dancers that, you know, I captured, that I shared on this particular live stream for Dancing on 4. Also to Carlos Cinta, Joan Soriano, Yaso Records. Big reminder is for dancers, but also dance teachers. As I mentioned, when I'm teaching these different timings, it's very helpful. It was always very helpful if I could have Carlos. I can teach it too, but to have Carlos, right, teach the instrument breakdown in the class before teaching the timing was just such a foundational help. So as you start to structure your classes and how to let students start exploring this, keep in mind what they already know, what you may need to teach them before going in this direction. And one of the things that is helpful is if they can hear some of these foundational instruments and sounds. As Isolde broke down in the video, you know, that bongo sound, the buki buki, where she was starting with her first of 3 steps, and then she's connecting to that slap on the 3, that taki tiki tak tak buki. So taki buki, she's connecting with that sound that allowed her to really connect along with the lead guitar. So for this next one, just for those that are remaining, we've got a little test here on this next social video. I filmed this recently at El Corrito Bachatero in Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. And I've looked at this. We're going to watch various social dancers here in this next video that are kind of cut to different songs. In one video, just one of these scenes, there's going to be 3 couples dancing on 4. There's going to be 3 couples in the frame dancing on 4, and there's really only one scene in which that's happening. So I want you to see if you can pick it out. So, you know, part of this is, in order to dance multiple timings, you don't need to visually be able to tell, you know, social dancing. But if you're coming from the position of being super solid on one and now needing to break your dance down a little bit in order to do this, it can be helpful to determine. So this is just a little test here. Here we go. So we're looking for the scene. We're looking for the scene where 3 couples, or there's dancers dancing on 4. There's only one scene here where 3 couples are dancing on 4. Have you seen it yet, or not? Have you seen it yet? Yes or no? Don't comment yet. Wait. We're looking for couples dancing on 4. We seen him yet? We're looking for 3 couples on 4. 3. Have we seen it yet? I think you all saw it. You saw they got it. It was this, so I was looking through this video. So I was looking for videos I'd filmed with Dancing on 4. And so I was looking at this most recent one that I filmed in Santo Domingo in El Corito Bachatero. And there was all these couples. I was like, give me an example of on 4, right? And we're seeing every timing throughout the video. We got on 3, we got on 1, we're on 2, on 3. Through all these couples. And then finally we get to the scene and there's 3 couples, 2 at the beginning, but 3 that are all dancing on 4. So here was the one, if you got it. You sold it, got it. This one here. They're all 3 dancing on 4 there. 4. Okay, so that was one of our tests. As we're wrapping up here, if you have any questions, I know people are going to watch this as we go on. And so one of the really cool things about last live stream, where we focused starting on 3, was we had Isolde and Sid from New York teaching, also a teacher, and then Isolde from Sweden, teacher, of course, and dancers. Right, dancers first, teachers after, but teachers, and they both released videos on Instagram where they're exploring timing, right? Or talking or discussing. Sid kind of referencing some of the exploration we did in that timing live stream, and Isolde recorded a new video where she's exploring on 1 and on 4, And so that's really cool. The more kind of content we can put out exploring this. Sometimes you could put a social dance video out on a different timing, and you don't even need to mention timing. It's just people becoming accustomed to seeing social dance both in the Dominican Republic and outside the Dominican Republic, but can become accustomed to timing and a variety of timings, which is how it's social danced in the DR. So you can push those social videos, but you can also post videos of teaching insights, of explorations, and kind of to keep this conversation going, because certainly, and I'll get into this more, but one reason I want to continue doing these live streams and talking about this is because, through the teaching of bachata and through its spread, which is wonderful, because it's a wonderful genre of music and dance, and there's so many positives that come with teaching and sharing it. But one of the things that also comes with teaching it, sometimes standards develop that aren't consistent with how it's social danced in the Dominican Republic. With that, which, as I've mentioned earlier, all communities don't need to be the same, but certainly want to keep this aspect of it alive, right? This aspect of dancing on multiple timings alive. And so, you know, as it's being taught, there's a lot of reasons why it's more straightforward and easier to start your class all on one timing and to start on the 1 and touch on the 4. There's a lot of reasons, and if you're a dance teacher, you know you could relate to that. And so it can be challenging to begin to teach and expose your students to a variety of timings. And we'll have future discussions specifically with dance teachers about this, you know, on different strategies you might use and how you can start approaching that. But whatever kind of style you teach of bachata, whether it's more focused on elements from the Dominican Republic, whether it's more modern, sensual, you know, one thing you can discuss with your students or share with your students, and it can happen within 1 minute, 2 minutes, as you're showing the foundational timing or foundational step, whether it's in lines or in partners, you can just mention this idea that timing in the Dominican Republic can be social dance starting on 2, 3, or 4. Just to mention it, because that way when your students see videos or when they go social dancing, both in their communities and abroad or in the Dominican Republic or in the Caribbean, and they experience this, they'll have some sort of foundation in it. Maybe they won't feel comfortable. That's fine. Maybe they won't feel comfortable staying on timing, but at least they have the foundation of kind of, oh, I heard about this, right? So, you know, even if you spend 1 or 2 minutes on it, it may confuse you. They may not completely understand what you're talking about at first. I mean, this was my case, just social dancing in the Dominican Republic and learning bachata. When I first was exposed to different timings, at first I didn't completely understand what was going on, and you know, I had to figure it out. So you're just giving your students these little nuggets, and the longer you have with them, the more you can explore this. Okay, so thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you Isolde and Ron for sharing the videos and all the social dancers in the videos, and we will see you all on a future live stream. I may do this a shorter, much shorter version of this live on Instagram here in a second, just to kind of see who's over there and keep the discussion going. But thanks again for all your help, and we will see you soon. Take care. Bye.